Welcome to season 2 of Rabbit Holes with Aaron, where we haven't made any drastic changes, but we believe we get better with time. So enjoy the wide constellation of guests that I have on this show. Enjoy our conversations. Hopefully, you get some nuggets and you can learn and grow and become a better person. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Rabbit Holes with Aaron. I'm Aaron, and today with me I have my special guest, Heath Jordan. He has been on my podcast before in season 1. You might remember him, but you can find him on, I think, episode 4, and he's back. And
Back.
he's got plans and he's got goals. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'll say we're back, baby. We're like Tony Stark at the expo. It's good to be back.
It's good to have a Marvel reference on my podcast, so thank you for that. I love Marvel.
Absolutely.
Um, so I was going to ask you a question like, what does your 10-year plan look like?
Yeah, we had talked briefly about this, and that's always a great question because again, obviously, in today's day and age, we move so fast. Not knowing what you're doing 10 minutes from now, or trying to plan for the next 10 minutes, let alone 10 days. 10 weeks and 10 months can seem daunting in itself. But obviously, you want to have an idea, right? In a sense, a rabbit to chase. Because if not, then I just feel like your decision making and your strategic moves can be, just a tire in the mud because you're like, well, what am I working towards? Where are we going? So I was kind of telling you, this was a few years ago, about 5 years ago now, but I was, on the old Instagram, and I came across this little picture, and I thought it was profound enough to screenshot and print off as a reminder. But what it says is, picture this: 10 years from now, you're married, nice home, good job. It's Christmas. Your kids are asleep. You and your spouse are on the couch having a drink and watching TV. It's snowing outside, and tomorrow's Saturday. All the hard work was worth it. You made it. So I printed that off about 5 years ago. I have no spouse. I have no kids, but I have a good job. I live in a place that it does not snow, but I can always go to a place where it does snow. And again, we're halfway through those checklists, but also halfway through, the timeline. And again, it's just a nice little reminder of what I'm kind of working towards because I would love to have a wife and kids and a nice family one day. Obviously, right, you can't put an exact timeline on that like you can with taking a trip somewhere or buying a materialistic thing, right? Because also you can have more of a timeline for that. This is again just by the good grace of the Lord bringing people into your life at the right time, allowing you to be in the right place at the right time, all those things. But again, it's just when you get up in the morning, you're like, hey, what kind of gets get your rock off? This is one of those things where when you're going into your shift to your job and people ask you your why, you can reference that. So honestly, if we're gonna get more specifics on like what kind of car I'm gonna drive, I don't know. Hopefully one that is nice. Uh, but again, for the grand scheme of things, I think again just overall in 10 years, just still continue to be in good physical shape. Continue to still try to have good spirituality. Still be spiritually fit. Obviously, right, your financials, you want like to have those in a good area, good good trajectory, not in debt, or at least not in like miserable credit card debt, right? If you have a home loan or something like that where it's a respectable debt, that's understandable. And again, just having opportunities to spend time with family and friends, because me, like that's my big thing.
Yeah.
I don't really always care to have materialistic things in the aspect. I mean, I have nice things, but overall, that's not my why. My why is to, again, create those memories so when I'm no longer here, people can look back and be like, hey, remember that time Heath did this? Or remember that time Heath did that? Or we went there and we saw this place? To me, that is way more profound and or leaves a bigger lasting effect than like Heath is gone, but he left me this watch. I don't ever wear the watch, but it collects dust in a box somewhere, and when I open it every
Hmm.
2 years, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot, I had this friend that left me this watch. Versus like, oh, I had this scar on my knee because we decided it'd be a great idea to go hiking with a bunch of beers, and then I slipped and fell and split my knee, and he carried me to fucking safety, and we had the beers at the end of, whatever that story is. I feel like that
Sure.
is more my speed and more of my why.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing, what you think about when it comes to 10 years. And I definitely agree that, like, taking a few steps back and kind of trying to see the horizon sometimes can get us unstuck from where we are right now. And that's something I really appreciate about you is that you, like, I remember you telling me about how you put somebody put like little piece of paper with things you're thankful for in a jar, and you were drawing them out because they gave them to you, and you were going to give them to somebody else or something like that. Does that,
Yep.
am I even close there?
Yeah, you're close, and I still have all the jars, and I started a new one for this year, and I do it basically around every Sunday. Also, sometimes I have shift on Sunday, so it might be Monday that I put it in there, but I stay pretty consistent. Again, of just once a week writing down what I'm grateful for, and then putting it in there. So again, yeah, down the road, I intended to give it to a friend who I knew appreciated things like that, and then again, I would assume that my other friends would be around to read set things that I was grateful for. But again, it could be 5 jars, it could be 50 jars, I don't know, but we'll figure that out
Yeah.
as we go along. But you weren't far off at all. And again, I just think that's something that, again, when people say, like, what was Heath like? You could be like, well, he, right, collected jars of gratitude. They'd be like, wow, that's consistency. And that's, again, just taking a moment to be like, where you're at in your life. What were you doing? Who was a part of it? And, all those things. And again, right, as you go through the years, it tells a story. It tells you where you're at each week and, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad, all of it. So,
Yeah.
again, I've enjoyed doing it, and I would love to be there for someone who gets to read them. But if I'm not, again, I just hope that it puts a smile on a lot of people's faces, and maybe again it'll be kind of like that trickle down effect where they'll take time to appreciate what they're grateful for and what they have and who they have. And I think again too, that's just a great way to look at life, because again life can be very negative, it can be very hard, and it's not easy, or it's very easy just to accept that and just crawl up in a ball and just let life kick you, because it will continue to do that. So in a sense, to kind of fight back and be a force to be reckoned with, but also to be a reflection of his light and somebody who just embodies happiness, joy, opportunity, optimism. That stuff's infectious. So be the disease that causes people benefit, not harm.
Yeah. We need more gratitude, don't we? In this world, in our lives.
uh yeah, I mean, even like the simplest thing, for me, one thing that I do, and again it's so simple, but every time I drive somewhere, when I get to my destination, I always just like say, hey, thanks God for getting me here safe and sound. Could have gotten a flat tire, could have gotten a fender bender, or worse, right? Could have gotten a car accident. I mean, the statistics is like, what, like 1 in 4,000 people. We have millions of people in this country, and so 1 in 4,000, like, there's people dying in car accidents every day, all day. I mean, I see it with my job. And so when you write just something as simple as going to the store, or even when you drive cross country like you do and you get to where you're going, I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
again, gratitude in itself, but also a blessing to get there without any issues. And again, it's just something to kind of overlook, because you're just like, oh, cool, like that's done. But again, sometimes you just want to take a step back and be like, wow, like this trip could have been so much worse if these things happened, but they didn't, and I'm thankful for that.
I wish it was like, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I wish it was like that. Like every, well, and I guess everybody does think that, like, oh, you're on vacation. That must be amazing. And it is. And there's all kinds of wonderful parts. So many breakthroughs and so much time to work through my nonsense, and me and my wife to both work through our nonsense, and some of it together. But then, yeah, we had a lot of things break, and a lot of things. We had three blowouts within a span of 2 weeks as
Okay.
we headed out on our journey, and two of them I had to manage on my own. One of them, Jill, was there, so she could like kind of block traffic because we had a 40-foot bumper pull now, so we have a
Okay.
bigger rig than I think than you've seen. And so, and then we had the truck breakdown, and then we had things on the RV break, like the jack, so we couldn't jack it back up to get in the truck. So, but here's the cool thing. Like there's so many hard things that happened that you realize how tough you are. You realize that you just don't know how to quit. You know, and I'm trying to, for here's a short story. So I got the jack on one side of the front of the RV went out, and the RV is 16,000 pounds, and
Oh, so
I've
it's
got
pretty
to get
light.
it. Yeah, really. I mean, one arm
Yeah.
at most for
Yeah.
me. You could use your mustache to lift it easy. But anyway, so I'm out there, and the jack's not working on one side of the front, and I've got to get it up about 8 feet so that it mates up with the fifth wheel mount in the bed of the truck. And I'm like, how am I going to get it from way down there to up here? And it's only 8 tons, but how do I get it from down there to up here? All I had is a bottle jack and random wood in the back of my truck and a few other parts and pieces and things I picked up off the side of the road or whatever.
Hmm.
Most of it useful, like wood. And I stacked the wood up and I put the bottle jack on top and I stacked wood on top of the bottle jack. And I jacked up one side automatically because it's power, and then I jack up the other side by hand a little bit. So I figured it out, and you find out what you're made of when you undertake big adventures like that.
Oh, of
Um,
course. You're
but
resilient.
but to your point, it does make you more grateful, man. When we leave somewhere and get somewhere, and we're like nothing broke, we're like, praise God. How thank you. Like, babe, did you notice something? She's like, yeah, what? Did you notice how quiet it is when nothing breaks? What are we going to do today? I don't know if we're not fixing something. And there
Yeah.
was a couple days, like back to back, when a coolant line in the truck went out, and we got that fixed and paid money on a credit card to get it fixed. The very next day, the jack went out, and so on and so forth. So sometimes it's like day after day, and you're like, we got to where we look at each other when anything seemingly impossible happens, and we're like, we do hard things, right, babe? And she's like, we do hard things, and we just keep going after it. But I'm sure that's the same for you and anybody else. Like even at your job and even in your new life, and that what new for me. Like I'm sure you face hardships, and that's where gratitude comes in. It's like I've got a jar with 5 hardships in it, and I got another jar with 1,000 gratitudes in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know,
Well, and again,
and
from the perspective that you look at it, right? A lot of people will just look at those five hard things. They're like, "See, it's just the life is so hard. It's this is unfair. All this stuff." And then right off to the side, if you just pivot your perspective, you're like, "I have 1,000 things to be grateful for." And so again, that's just something that we all have to do in our day to day lives, and again, it's just to find that. But again, it's like it's a mental thing. One thing
yeah,
I do when I wake up, and I always wake up just exhausted. I don't think I ever really ever get good sleep. Or at least it doesn't feel that way in the morning, right? But when I wake up and I mean my feet touch the ground, mind you, I have to like put my alarm in my like living room because I just can't, have just the
yeah,
phone. I'll just snooze that thing. So to be proactive, I have to get up and start walking. But I'm able to walk. My knees and joints don't hurt that bad. But again, I'm able to take a deep breath into to my lungs, and I have this clean bill of health. Each morning. I mean, that's a true blessing. I mean, there's
yeah,
again so many people who are in the hospital and or are elderly that are in the nursing home who just wish that they could be healthy again for one day. So it's just again, but I start my day by just immediately giving gratitude, like waking up, on time. grateful, right? Because there's nothing worse than waking up. You're like, I'm late for work, for a meeting, a flight, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like, no one likes to be late, right? We always like to be early. So, that, right? You're just like, oh, thank you. And then, again, just like having that, the health. Because again, one day, you might not be able to get up or you're going to need assistance. I'm going to have to call 911 to have somebody pick me off the ground. I don't know. Hopefully not. But like, again, I see that on a regular basis. So again, when you take a step back and you're just like, I am just so thankful for my youth that I do have. We always joke that we're getting older, but in the grand schemes, we're about a third away through this race. And so again, we're in a good spot, but I continue to go out there and, put my body through, good workouts and things to, keep it in great shape. But again, I'm just incredibly grateful because I've been given this amazing honor and blessing to be able to do that, because there are so many people my age who can't bend over and touch their toes. There are so many people,
Hmm.
they can't even do 10 push-ups. And, on one hand, it's, incredibly sad. But on the other hand, it just makes me appreciate, the things that I have. And again, healthy, a health, a mind that's fully functional and it can retain knowledge, and just a heart that is ready to melt the earth of joy. Like, what more could I ask for? The other things are great, don't get me wrong, right? Yeah, have a nice car to get you to where and from, a nice place to live, good food. But you know what makes better food? Good company, right? Having people in your
Yeah.
life. So, and again, I have you, I have so many other, great friends. And like for that, like I feel like I'm one of the richest people in the world. And again, that's just something that I'm incredibly grateful for. And right, because, friendships are just like any other relationship, they take two people, if not more people in a sense, right? So you got to communicate, you got to commit, you got to put forth effort. And, that takes work. But again, the end result is always worth it. Having 5 minutes or 5 days with the boys, over a nice cold beer or a good cigar. What more in that moment could you ask for? And
Yeah.
again, those are obviously very short, but they are just so fulfilling, and they feed the soul. At least mine do. Uh, and it's what gets me, to continue to almost come back. It's like we're a crackhead, right? Like that is our addiction. Like I'm out there hustling and working so I can get that high. Thankfully, that high is, a dopamine high that my body secretes, by itself, but in a healthy manner, like being around people that I love and cherish. That is what gets my motor going. That's what, that is my octane. That is my why. And again, we try to, spill that and pour that into other people. And right, there's days where you're like, I got nothing to give. I'm sorry, team. And that's when someone, pours into you, or, they pour a little bit back into you. And, it's give and
Sure.
take aspect, right? That's just like, again, any relationship. So you never want to count your chickens because, or before they hatch, in this sense. But again, you don't want to take anything for granted, because, right, relationships do end. People move away. Sometimes they just get tired of, your brand of vodka. Kind of sucks sometimes, but again, that's just kind of how life is. And, you wish them the best. And, you always tell them if you ever want to come back and have, a sip of your vodka, they're always welcome. And again, you just appreciate the times that you had. And then the people that are still in your circle, you just continue to work for, another opportunity to see them and create memories. And around the pendulum we go until, the big almighty calls us home. And then that's when the
Wow.
real party starts.
Absolutely. Well, I was listening to what you said, and I like what you said about consistency, and I've been thinking about that a lot. Well, consistency. Well, there's two different ways I can go with this. There's two different rabbit holes, and you can pick which one. Consistency affects friendships and making new friends.
Hmm.
Consistency, well, affects a lot of things, but these are the two things that I'm thinking about. Like consistency is the main ingredient to discipline. So
Correct.
which one of those holes do you want to go into? And then I'll elaborate more.
I think we can go down the first one, just only because, in the sense, like, consistency is discipline, right? Because people are like, oh, I wish I was, motivated like you. It's not motivation that gets me up in the morning or puts me through a hard workout, or what have you. It's the discipline uh, to do so. And in your point, in the first route, it's so important in communications or anything that you do for the longevity, because to get to somewhere that is super far, or to obtain a health conquest, if it's a marathon, triathlon, or just hiking a tall mountain, it takes consistency to continue to work to get to that mountaintop, whatever that mountaintop is. So that's
Yeah.
where in Oregon, in the sense too, right? Just like the longevity of a relationship, checking in, seeing if they need anything, and they do the same for you. Because right, we all been there where you're the one that just continually puts in, puts in, puts in. Well, eventually you're like, right, you're not getting any ROI. You're like, all right, well, let's cut that oil spigot off because I'm not getting anything, and you just move on. And that's been one of my biggest like flaws, in the sense
Mm.
I say flaw, but challenges,
Sure.
is noticing when I'm not getting the return, or the same energy and dedication, or right consistency to have that relationship. There's been a lot of times where like I've been the one that's been, towing the line and pulling them. And it's only when you look back that you're like, they've already cut their hand off. They let me go a long time ago. I'm just carrying around their hand thinking I was still, holding on to something, when in reality I
Mm.
wasn't. So that's been
Yeah.
like a hard lesson for me, just because again, like I don't like when things end. Granted, right, that is life in a nutshell, right? Like something's gonna start and it's gonna end. Again, that's what makes life beautiful, knowing that there is an end. And what you do between the start and the finish date, obviously is what you make of it. But when you're in those seasons, or those chapters, or whatever you want to call them, where things are great, and you have a certain friend group, or a certain girlfriend, or God forbid, wife that's supposed to go forever. But right, we've all seen relationships end, and things like that. But you just want them to last forever, and sometimes they're not meant to. Sometimes they're just meant to be, in the sense, right, like your rocket booster to get you to the next stratosphere. And for me, again, I love being somebody's rocket booster, don't get me wrong, and I want to like go with them to the stratosphere. And sometimes I'm not able to reach that height that they're at. But also I've learned through experiences that I have people that I'm running the race with, and I start to notice that they're falling behind. And in life, sometimes you just got to let those people go, because they're just going to hold you back. And that's not to say that they're not a good person, or that that they're doing anything wrong. It's just sometimes, right, you're just running a faster pace. You're still running to the same finish line in a sense, but you're meant to catch the next group. You're meant to get to that one spot where the sun is shining just a little bit brighter because you earned it that day. So that is something in my recent years of travel, and again, right, moving around and having friend groups from certain stages in my life, that just not categorizing them, but just understanding that, like, for some of these people, right, like you and I are still friends, but like there's UNT friends that I have that nowadays, right, we don't really ever talk much, but like they fit into that college, like we were friends in college, and that 3 to 4 years that we were at UNT was legendary. But that's what it was. And now we're on to the next thing, and we take what we learned from them and the experiences and the education, and we apply it to where we are now, so we can make ourselves better, but then also help those that are around us. So again, it's something that I work at each day. That's one of my biggest like challenges, because again, like there's so many people I have so much love for, and in some aspects it breaks my heart that like I can't call them and tell them, or catch up with them, because it's just that's not where we're at anymore, right? They've moved on, they got new careers, they have new spouses or what have you, and what we were 4 years ago, it's not who we are now. And though I never really watched The Office, just because I could never get past season one because it was so dry. But there obviously are a lot of like great references. But the one that they have like in season 8, season 9, whatever it is at the end. But when that one guy says, he's like, I wish you knew her in the good old days before you left them. I think that's probably one of the most profound lines in any sitcom, comedy, movie, whatever category you want to put it in. I just think that is like so true. But again, it comes back to what we talked about, like the gratitude, just to like take a moment in that time that you're in and appreciate it, because in 10 days, in 10 months, or in 10 years, it's going to be completely different. And that's okay. But just again, to acknowledge that and just appreciate where you are in that season of life, and give it its day, and let it have its moment, because those moments are just so special.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to summarize it in sometimes to grow you got to go, and sometimes to go you got to grow. And so it's like it works both ways, but I think about that like you left that group of friends to pursue your career and your future and all your 10-year plan things, wife, children, house. And sometimes you got to let go and move on. And what I found and why I said that is because there's some groups that I've outgrown, and nothing against them. I
Yeah,
mean, but I had to leave that group not only for me to keep growing, but for them to fill in my spot and to grow that way as well.
yeah,
So everybody gets to grow when you go. And that's what I found too in our travels. We go away, we were away this last time for 6 months. We came back, and different groups that we were part of, some of them don't need us anymore. They're fine, they're good. And we focus our energy on these new things and make new friendships. And back to the friendship piece that you were talking about a minute ago that I brought up. Like I'm finding in my research, and it surprised me that if because I was like I asked ChatGPT, right? I was like, hey, I'm trying to make friends for the second half of my life, right? I turned 52 in 2 days. I'm like I'm
happy
trying to
birthday,
make
Craig.
friends. Thank you. To go all the way to like 120. Like I need to start making some more friends, right? And I get to keep some, right? You're my friend. I've got a lot of friends all over the place, but like I'm looking for. And so I asked ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT was like, "Well, to form friendships, you'd be surprised that you have to meet consistently." And so, like, and that's a part of what you're talking about, consistency. Like, you show up for whatever your group is, or whatever your sport is, or maybe
Yeah,
whatever your sporting event is, and you see the same people there, and you're like, hey, you want to go get wings after, or let's get a beer or something, and then you start a friendship kind of relationship. And then it's like, hey, we had a good time. We'll do it again next Thursday. And then, like, you got somebody you meet every Thursday with. And then
yeah,
you're like, hey, for you particularly, you haven't been married yet. Then you're like, I found a wife. I'm getting married. You want to be my best man, or you want to, well, maybe not. I'm sure you got plenty of guys to be your best man. But hey, you want to come to my wedding? Bring a plus one or something. Bring your
yeah,
dog. I don't care, And then, then that's your new people group. And then you start becoming deeper friends. And you have a cigar with them. Then hang out around a campfire with them or whatever the case may be. And, I can see all those main components in the fraternity that we were part of,
yeah,
right? We hung around campfires, we went and did campouts, we helped the community, we did all this different fun stuff. And we met for, I mean, I guess they met for darts and to get a beer and whatever on a weekday night after college or whatever, get pizza sometimes. So there's all this consistency that was in there. I was surprised to find that out because I've been asking people on the podcast, what do you think a main component of friendship is? And they're like, shared vision and dreams. And I was like, okay, that makes sense.
hmm,
Shared hobbies. Okay, yeah, that makes sense too. And so I'm hearing all these good ideas, but it's hard to nail down an action plan. And so I guess, you've already got a key component if you got some consistency, because then if you meet with a group of people once a week, it's said you need to meet as regularly as 2 times a month. And I'm just kind of talking about it, but so I started thinking about it, and I guess I'm thinking out loud with you about it. Have you noticed that that's true in your life, or do you have something to add, or do you think it's not true,
no,
or
I
would you
think
pass?
I don't think in the sense that, right, the people you talk to, or in that, what they talk about, right, shared vision, shared goals, shared hobbies and things like that. That's all true. I think in kind of what we're talking about, the main aspect, the main ingredient, right, is showing up. Like you have to put in the work. I could sit here and write
Yeah,
a workout plan that's going to get me ready for a high rocks workout, or a firefighter fitness challenge, or run a marathon. But if you don't if you don't show up and do the work, that dream, that goal is just gonna stay there on that board. It ain't going nowhere. But like, you're not gonna eclipse that mountaintop because you didn't show up to put in the work. So again, that right goes with your job, goes with um, your goals, aspirations, education, all the things. But again, same thing with relationships, with friendships. Like, you have to show up. If you don't show up, it's just And I always tell people, obviously I'm not perfect and I definitely don't always say the right thing, but one thing that I try to do is right show up when it matters. And I saw this guy talk about, and he's a very like wealthy entrepreneur, but he talked about how he had something happen in his life with him and his wife. And one day, shortly after the event took place, they heard a knock at their door, and it was like, one of his friends. And he's like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing here?" He's like, "When you have that kind of news," he goes, "you show up." Right, like, there's
Yeah.
so many people, right? They write you on social media, thoughts and prayers. And don't get me wrong, like, that's all, well endowed, and again, it's appreciated. But then there's like those select few that like move fucking mountains. That
Right.
like, right, behind closed doors in the darkness, right, and they show up. Those are the people that you're like, right, when your world is going down like the Hindenburg, and they come with an extinguisher. They might not be able to put out the whole thing, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes some problems are so vast and so complex, but you're there. You're there. You're ready to lend a hand. And I just think that again, as humans, that's what we need. You need to know that like someone's got your back. And again, obviously for us at the fraternity, but again, going into the service, like that's who's in there. Like those are the people that make up the ranks. It's not these other people who do all the talking, virtue signaling. Oh, I'm so educated. I know all the things, whatever. But when fucking, gravel's meeting the road, right? And fucking the chips are down. It's like who you got, and then there's these select few people that are like, they just whisper behind like, I got your back. Those people are undefeated. They're the people that are resilient. They're the people that make this fucking country go. They're the people that keep this world spinning. They are the true backbone to society in my eyes and in my opinion, because without it, I mean, again, right, all those words just fall on deaf ears, right? Like anybody can say like, "Hey man, I got you, I got you, I got you," and then when you lend out that hand, you're like, "I really need you to come through for me," and they're nowhere to be found. One, that'll leave a bitter taste in your mouth, but two, like again, it just kind of shows you who they are. And I'm not saying that they're a bad person, right? Because
Right.
give people enough time, they will show you who they are. For myself, again, I don't have $1 million in the bank account yet. One day I hope to. That allows me to travel more. But my goal in life, further down the road is to be somebody who, at the drop of a hat, you know, I have the funds and the accessibility to be there for a family member and or friend to help them in a time of need. To be that guy. That is my like number one goal in life. Obviously, one day I hope to be a great father, a loving husband, all those things. But right now, I know I can be a great friend. I feel like I have been a good friend to people. And don't get me wrong, right? I've obviously had my mistakes made and lessons learned, and continue to try to grow. But again, for the people that are still, hanging around, the fucking the water stand, the Kool Aid fucking area, I want to show up for those people. I want to be there for them because they were there for
Yeah.
me, and
Yeah.
that means so much to me. So I just try to, return the favor. But again, to your point, you can have the greatest plan written down, but if there is no action, it'll never come to fruition, right? Elvis once said, "A little less conversation, a little more action, baby."
Yeah.
That's that's what gets it done. The doers in the world, the people that pick up their feet, put their boots on one foot at a time, lace them up, and get after it. And may
Yeah.
we all do that each and every day.
Well, and when you talk about that, it makes me think about I had another friend that shared with me there's a region in the brain, and I don't, he had a three-word Latin definite part of the brain, something interior cortical, something or another. I'm wrong on all those words, but it was like that. And he was like, there's an area of the brain, enter the name that I don't remember. It's inside the middle of your brain, and basically, whenever you do something you don't want to do, it grows that part of your brain.
Mm.
And what does a part of that part of the brain do? That part of the brain is responsible for your confidence and your competence. So the more hard things, and we're talking about discipline, and we're talking about showing up, and we're talking about good choices, the more hard things you choose to do, the more confident you become, which is money in every sphere of life,
Yeah.
which is, in success, you look at people that are most successful, they walk through the room and you know it, right? They're confident. They have an aura, they have a bearing, they have a vibe, they have all the stuff going on. And at the same time, they're smiling and shaking
Yeah.
hands and asking how you're doing and patting you on the back. And how's your mom? How's she doing? Did she recover or whatever? They're like, they're connecting on all cylinders. And so,
They give a shit. Yeah.
well, and I think there's a very important distinction that you made too, and that is there's a difference between saying you care and showing up, which I translate into making choices, taking action, you know,
Yeah.
to care. There's a night and day difference. I can say whatever I want to say to somebody, and so many people are saying whatever they want to say, but they have no action. And see, the thing is, if you take and do the action consistently, you don't ever have to say a word. It cuts your word count down to like 5 per person. Yeah, good
Mm-hmm.
job. I see you, my man. And you're out of the room, and everybody feels better, you
My man.
know?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the actions, and I think that's what we're kind of circling around it like piranhas around the cow. We're not biting it, but it really is those hard actions that are what we're doing, not only to show we care, also to show up for whatever things we support, the people we support, our friends, our colleagues, and I think that consistently comes back again. Consistency comes back again in the way that we do our actions. And even like you're saying, and to think about what you shared a little bit more, like when you get up in the morning and shoot, you moved your alarm clock further away, which is a technique that I have learned in my worst sleeping times in the Marine Corps was I got to put, there was a time when I put an alarm clock in the drawer of my dresser and closed it because I was getting like 4 hours of sleep a night. And I would literally get out of my bunk bed from the top bunk, walk across the room, turn off the alarm completely, and go back to bed and wake up 3 hours later. That only happens once in the Marine Corps. So after that, I've learned how to put it in my drawer and close the drawer and have to find it. And then I'd wake up trying to find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are actions we take and steps we set up to make sure we show up our best person every time.
No, absolutely. Um, and this is kind of like, brick by brick, inch by inch, day by day, right? Rep by rep, you'll get that result. And the thing we kind of get bogged down too, and again, I'm guilty of it, but you when you're running your race, you're right, you're looking around and right, your peers, I'm like, well, they're here at this point. You're like, well, I'm not there. I must be failing. So it's just being mindful that right, like everybody's running their own race, everybody's got their own things going on. And again, right, you can circle that back to the gratitude. You're like, listen, and I don't have all the things that they have, but you know what? Jay Z once said it. He was on the plane to Epstein's Island. He got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. People can have all this glitz and glamour, but behind closed doors, they're going through hell. And for
Yeah,
somebody who maybe doesn't have all those things, their mind is or their mind is simple, at ease, but their life is simple. That's a blessing in itself, right? So it's just some of those things to always kind of remind yourself, but again, not to try to get caught up, get comparing, because again, like the old saying, uh, comparison is the thief of joy. You sit here and compare all the things that you don't have, and again, you're looking at those five negative things versus the 1,000 gratitude things. You're gonna sit there and be like, I just, I'm not good enough. I don't have these things. No one loves me. Uh, Mr. and Mrs. Jones over there has everything. When lo and behold, like they're at each other's throats in the middle of the night. Like you don't know that. So
yeah,
it's things like that to kind of take a step back. And again, like we just kind of said, like right, just being consistent to yourself and just showing gratitude, and you will find that all of a sudden all that other stuff just seems to dissipate and go away, and you get to kind of really like grasp and enjoy joy, like pure happiness. Like it's so hard to find that, and I understand, it's for a brief moment, but again, like that dopamine high that it gives you, the feeling of just like euphoria, like you said, after a while, right? Like you become that aura, you become, the vibe when you walk through, and they're like, God damn, that guy, is he floating? Like, did his feet even touch the ground? You
Yeah.
get to be that guy, but again, that doesn't mean that, they didn't just walk through 7 miles of fucking shit. They weren't Andy Dufresne crawling through 500 yards of fucking, sewer manure to get to freedom. So, again, when you see somebody who is, getting their, accolades and stuff, don't be like, oh, I can't believe it, because I assure you, where they came from and that valley that they were in, you probably couldn't even make it through that valley. So how about you just be grateful for the valley that you're in? And again, it's all about mindset. And as you stated with the people that you've talked to, again, finding the mindset of, again, people that share the commonality of goals, aspirations, you know, destinations, things like that. That's how you all, continue to work towards something, and right, you build camaraderie and you build friendship out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wondered if you had any questions for me about why I'm going to Thailand on June 7th.
You said why you're going there? Why are you going there?
And there you go. Boom. You got it. You picked up the question. Well, yeah, so, yeah, we just finished visiting the 48 states a couple months ago now, all 48 of the contiguous states. Don't
Nice.
worry, Alaska and Hawaii. Hawaii, we're coming for you too, but just not yet. We have
Congratulations.
plans, thank you. We have plans to visit those two states before Jill turns 50, and she's
Nice.
48, which gives us a couple years to go. Thailand is supposed to be our debt consolidation plan. So we're going to go to Thailand and live for a fraction of my retired income and use the rest of the income to pay off any debts that we have, credit card debts. Because I'll tell you, life on the road, you want some numbers to go with
Tuh.
visiting all 48 states? I got some numbers for you. $34,000 in credit card debt
Woo.
because of breakdowns and repairs and that doesn't even count the things I fixed for $25. That
Right.
would have cost thousands. And so that's like the low price. But you know, I started to see that at first. You feel like you're crippled, like
Yeah.
you're trapped, like we can afford to pay the minimum payment and it'll take 75 years to pay off this credit, right? And credit cards and APR and all that nonsense. I am exaggerating, but probably only 10 or 13. But anyway, but so we had to come up with something, and as things broke, we got more and more frustrated. Like, man, I don't think we'll be able to make the minimum payment after we get this coolant problem fixed with the truck. And so I had this idea because I've been to Thailand a couple times in the 90s on a Navy ship.
There you go.
And, we
Best way
had
to get
time out
there.
there. And I can, Lance Corporal pay went 10 times farther in Thailand, right? I ordered 3 custom suits. I was going along with my garage sale skills, making not drug deals, but really good deals with the shop owners and getting backpacks and clothes and gifts for my family. I bought my
Yeah.
mom like a yard of silk to make a dress with for like negligible, like $10 or something. This was
Yeah.
the 90s. But it's still like you say, one day I'll be a millionaire. You could go to Thailand and you'd be a millionaire in baht.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if
Hmm.
you took $1,000, you'd be, or something like that. But anyway, so that's our debt consolidation plan. We're going to go over there, live relatively modest, but not like village lifestyle. We're going to go see some stuff and travel around, and we're going to work on paying off our debt. And we're also going to like try and get to Italy and some other countries, and
Love that.
then come back in time for Christmas or something. And then when I'm over there, I'm hoping with the podcast I can like interview other expats and talk to them and see, who knows what, and have good conversations just like we're having.
Absolutely.
So thank you for asking me that question, Heath, because I haven't been able to talk. Well, number one, it updates you, but number two, it updates my podcast audience who doesn't
Absolutely.
have a clue about my private life. Um, maybe just a little bit.
Private. No, that's fantastic, man, and good for you. But also, again, um, right, like when you start putting, pen to paper, doing the math, looking at numbers. As much as sometimes it is hard, you're like, all right, what's this going to cost and stuff. But, like, that's the only really way to know what is feasible, what is not, and can things be done versus just like, oh, just throwing money out the window and be like, oh, that'll patch it. No, well, like any true goal, like you got to write it down, and then you got to do the research, and again, show up and execute and be consistent. Like, that is the way. So again, you were looking at it, you're like, how are we going to do this? You're like, well, we have a certain lifestyle we want to have. We love to travel. Well, what if we go somewhere where, right, my income will cover all of our bills, and also we can chip away at what we owe, and in the meantime we can learn a new language, possibly new skills, meet new people. So I think it's terrific. Again, like, you have this opportunity to do something that most people would, dream of in this sense. So I think it's outstanding. And again, especially with, right, it's not the 90s where it's like you wrote a letter, you hope it gets there. Like, you can get on your phone, and you can use, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, TikTok, whatever. And you can, still converse and update people and or communicate, and if you need help, you can be like, hey, can you send something to this address, what have you. Like, we have that capability now, which again is, again, a huge just blessing. But also, like, I, I'm just clapping for you in the back of the room, thinking like this is outstanding, because again, so many people wish they could just pick up and just go and do this, but right, they got to drive the 45 minutes to their job that they can't stand, and work for a
Uh-oh.
fat boss that's going to die of diabetes in 10 years, all the bullshit. And the fact that you're able to not have to do that because you paid your dues, you work really hard, you're an incredible human being. Again, I think it's just outstanding. So I hope you go over there and just continue to add just more incredible stories and moments to your life, and you get to gain more experiences. And I can't wait to hear the stories next time I see you. We have a cigar, because you're gonna be like, this one time in Bangkok, or this one time in Thailand. I mean, those are
Yeah,
those are those are magical moments, man.
yeah. Well, and by the way, I got an open invitation. We're going to try and have a guest room. So all you
Let's
got to do is jump on a plane.
Let's go. I'm trying to go out to Hawaii to see some friends this year, because they've obviously
Okay,
extended the invite. I looked at flights earlier because I was like, okay, like, let's see what we're kind of managing. What's it going to cost? And the flight is between $750 and $1,000. So you're like, okay, but again, for most people, going to Hawaii is a very expensive trip, because you got to do airfare, you got to do lodging, a car rental, not to mention all the food and everything else. So the fact that you have somebody who has a home there, they have transportation. I mean, you negate and you wipe away two
sure.
thirds of what that trip would cost you. So again, it's just another incredible thing of having great people in your life. But again, to be able to have that opportunity, right? You stay consistent in communicating, following up. And the buddy that I saw, I actually see two of them that are out there, but one of them, I told him I was going to Seattle to see some of my other Navy buddies, and he's like, well, you know what? He's like, because Seattle's basically, halfway between Florida and
Sure.
Hawaii. He's like, I'll fly to Seattle, and I'll spend the weekend with you. And it was just a awesome weekend. You picked up right where we left off. But again, just like, it's an testament. Like, to most people, they're like, wait, this guy got on a plane, flew, the 6 hours to spend, basically 48 hours with you. And I'm not trying to be mean, but, obviously, like, Bremerton, Bangor, Washington's not the, most sought after destination. But, it's a cornerstone of our chapters of our lives. And we have a
Sure.
lot of great stories there. But I mean, that weekend was just everything my soul needed. And so again, I look forward to kind of repaying the favor, going out to them and seeing them and whatnot. But for your average Joe, they're like, I would never do that. But again, like, they don't have that camaraderie and the friendships that we have and experience, because again, you don't have the person that'll show up at your doorstep on your worst day. They're the ones that are on Facebook, be like, thoughts and prayers. Like, I can
Yeah.
almost, I'm not, again, I'm not negating that, because again, sometimes that's all someone can give, and so you can't knock what someone is trying to give you.
Right.
But when you can show up and do that, it just means that much more. So again, I always try to implore and challenge people because, like, again, for the giving and the receiving, like, there's just something about being there for somebody. Or again, like that feeling when you just go to a friend's house unannounced, you knock on their door and they answer it, and they're just not expecting you, and it's you. I mean, what a fucking moment. You know what I mean? Um, and it's almost like being a kid again, and just like, playtime at recess. Like it makes you feel young again. But also, like, it's just like one of those magic moments, and like I love doing that, and I'm actually planning on doing that a couple times this year, and just going to see friends and kind of just showing up unannounced, and just making a moment. And I think that stuff, at least for me, is what makes life worth living.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy those moments too. Like when we were on the road, we visited Marines I served with, and had a moment like that where it's like, oh, hold on, we're coming to Connecticut. Are any Marines I know in Connecticut? And then, I looked on my Facebook and I found one that I served with.
Yep.
I I recognized his face, but I barely remembered him. Like we had to have a conversation where I was like, "Hey, how do you remember me? Because I remember your face." But he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember you from the chapel. You played the guitar every Sunday." And I was like, "Oh, I remember that, but I didn't remember that's where I knew him from."
Yeah.
So, but I also showed up, and this is something you probably already do this, but I like showed up with gifts. So that's just a way to push it over the top. Like I showed up with fresh Texas honey from the last summer's harvest, and I showed up with a book of
Nice.
poetry that I'd written.
Love that.
I'm like, thanks for, they take us out to dinner or something. I'll be like, thanks for your hospitality. Here you go. Bloop. And you're
Yeah.
like, wow, Texas
Yeah. No,
honey?
that's
Thanks.
that's so outstanding. I always joke sometimes I show to people's house like I am the gift. No, I was kidding.
And that's true. I mean, really, it is true. It really is
Yeah, but
true.
it's that's kind of like it's almost like narcissism. So you definitely want to, like, get away from that. But
Yeah. Well, you
sometimes
can't
you're like,
say it
hey,
out loud, but you just know it.
yeah. But no, like when you can, like you said, the honey from the harvest, or the book that the poetry, or again, like, hey, I saw this thing and I thought of you, or just showing up with a bottle of bourbon and a cigar. I mean, right? Who
That
is gonna
never
be like,
gets old.
how dare you come
Yeah.
into my house with such a divine gift, So, no, I think that's terrific. But again, like, I think that speaks to kind of like, right, your love language. Like, you love, giving gifts, and seeing the reaction on the person's face. It's almost like those old, like, MasterCard commercials. Shirt $99, airplane ticket, 500. The look on your friend's face, you showing up unannounced, priceless. Like,
Right.
genuinely priceless. And that is something that, like, you just look back and you just remember, and again, just appreciate, because again, one day you won't be here, and people move, or shit happens, and that shirt that you bought them, either it doesn't fit, or it got a hole in it, or whatever, or they gave it to Goodwill. But they have that memory of you. Like, that shit never fades until you get dementia, and at that point, well, you're gonna die soon anyways. But leading up to that point, so worth it.
Yeah.
Always worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast today, Heath. It was a
Absolutely,
pleasure
Aaron.
to talk to you.
Likewise. It's so good to see you, and to catch up. And again, I love your plan. Uh, Again, I love our friendship. Again, thanks for being consistent with me and showing up for me. And obviously, when I'm in the area, I know you show up and show out. So again, thank you for that. And again, it's just it's always a pleasure to be a part of your journey and all the things that you're doing, because I know you're out there making the world a better place. And the fact that you let me be a part of that is a true honor.
Thanks, Heath, for being on the podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love hearing all the great things you're doing, Aaron. And again, I just appreciate you being consistent with me and showing up for me, especially when I come into town to Dallas to visit. You always find a way to drop what you're doing and, make the 15-minute or the 50-minute, whatever it is, drive to have the cigar with me, and, to tell me all the things that you're doing. So it's just an absolute pleasure to have you as a friend. And again, for all the great things that you do to help people in any way that you can, because again, that's just who you are. It is a true honor.
Well, thank you, Heath, for all your nice comments. And thank you to my listeners for checking out Rabbit Holes with Aaron. We'll see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.